Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Welcome to Analog Dialogue, where we talk all things about analog. I hope you can bring your favorite drinks and join us in for about an hour of conversation. Today we have
Frito.
and I'm Wakako. It's fun to show up here again with Frito.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while, my partner in crime. It's going to be like you're invited to our dining table.
Oh, no.
And we're just going to chat about everything and
All
and
things
anything.
creative.
Yes, today
Yes.
we're going to do a little bit differently this time. We're going to be talking about analog and creativity in a way, and how creativity has fueled and is fueling Bamkuhen as a business and as a community, how it has been fueling
Yeah.
what we do.
I find that creativity goes through everything that we do. It's like I feel like we wake up with creativity and go to bed with creativity and everything else in between. So I think it's a great chance to actually
Yeah,
reveal.
that sounds a little scary too. But
Well, we can reveal a little bit how we
Yeah.
use it on a day-to-day basis.
That's true. Yes, it is. It's almost like an air pause.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true, and that's kind of how you and I sort of relate to each other too.
Yes, very much so. I think that's how we met. Actually,
That's
was
nice.
through creativity.
That's gonna be a question. How'd you meet? But anyways, if you have any questions, we have Emil in the background. He's helping us with curating comments and collecting questions. We will have Q&A at the very end of the time. So if you have any questions along the way, please do leave them in the chat, and he will be keeping those and hopefully bringing them forward when we have a Q&A time.
That sounds great. Do you want to get started with sharing with us how you came to discover creativity for yourself?
That's interesting. How we came to discover the creativity.
Yeah.
Sure. Anyway, I didn't realize that's something you discover. But yes.
Well, tell me more.
So my background, I think, in the world of creativity is that I started part of the second half of my education in both architecture and design, and Art Center College of Design is where I graduated with my design degree. And I think between architecture school and design school, I was very fortunate to sort of meet a lot of creative people, creative teachers, who inspired me to dig deeper into finding out a red thread
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
problem solving and ideas and concept. And I think to me that has become sort of the vital way of looking at the world.
Mm.
And I took that on, and I did have a professional job. This is my professional job.
You used to have a professional
Yeah,
job?
I used to have
I'm
a
glad to
professional
hear.
job. I know. Before BK is what I meant to say. I was working also after graduating from school. I was working in the design field as a researcher, trend researcher,
Mhm.
and I think that's where I got to practice a little bit of that design and creativity through research. But really, I feel like when we started Bamkuhen, I got to really fully embrace that idea into everything we do.
Was it a little bit like the real world experience was practice, and now you're actually turning it
Into the
into
real world.
the real world in your own
Yeah,
world,
in my real
the
world.
BK world.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of why I wanted to start BK,
Yeah.
because I wanted to really, really practice what I felt was needed in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How about
I like that you use the word practice. That it's never a
Mhm.
fulfilled, it's never a finished kind of thing. I feel like it's always a work in progress. That's how you sign your
Yes.
love letter every month
Work
as well.
in progress. Yeah.
It's always a work in progress.
It's just you never finish. Yeah, it's true. How about you?
For me, creativity, I think it took me a while to put a label to it actually, but I always wanted to do things. I always try to figure out how to do things differently
Since when?
since the beginning of time. Because
Even when you were little?
yeah, and that's why I never fit in, because I always try to go against what everybody else does. What everybody else does, I look at what everybody else does and say, okay, I see the different ways that you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do it the opposite way of what I see. And that then, of course, is not suitable for most industries, but in the creative world, that's the best possible way to be able to look at things
Yeah.
with a different set of eyes,
You
different
found your
mindset.
niche. Yeah.
Yeah, here at BK, in many ways. And then there was a point when I talked to one of my students, and I tried to encourage that student to do the same thing, to think a bit broader, to think differently, to look at
What
things
do you
from a new
teach?
way. At the time it was a product design class, but I noticed that the student was doing very obvious kind of solution. I said, hey, you've got to be a bit more creative here. And the student said, yeah, I know, but I don't know how to. And that was sort of the aha moment where I was like, wait a minute, you don't know how to think differently? That's got to be a way to kind of put this into practice.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to shift my gears from teaching software and other things and said, I'm going to try to figure out a way to teach creativity as a class. And that's been, for the past decade, one of the main courses
Has it
that I teach.
been 10 years since
Yeah, I
you
think-
studied creative strategies?
Yeah, it's been over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's scary.
That is a little scary. Yeah.
But it's an incredibly fun class because
Mhm.
students get to, I think, practice. That's the
Yeah.
word that you used. Right? So they get to practice their creativity. So we do
Right.
small little exercises
Yeah.
in a very, very safe space.
Mm-hmm. And then I don't remember, when did your book end up coming? Was it before that you started teaching class or during, or?
No, this book was came about after about 3-4 years of teaching the class.
Mhm.
The class was successful in the sense that students really loved taking it and had a really fun time with it.
What's the book?
It's a creative
In
strategies.
case people might not know.
It's the title of the class, and it's basically 10 approaches of infusing your everyday life with more creativity. And the way the book came about is I figured that I should have something that goes along with the actual class so that students can read along with some of the case studies that I've covered.
It's like a textbook.
Well, kind of. It's anecdotes.
And actually, it's not like text. That sounds so boring.
That sounds
Yeah.
terrible. It's like, here's step one of being creative.
Yeah.
but what the book is about, the case studies from my professional career, when I used to have a professional career, when I used to work for corporations, I looked at how I actually went about the process of thinking differently, of using other perspectives, of prototyping ideas, testing ideas. And
Right.
those case studies ultimately became the book. So that's what the whole content is.
Yeah.
And it's been a wild approach for the students to practice that with every single week getting a new design
Those
challenge.
have been fun classes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot like kind of what we do here too, which every week is a new challenge to kind of go through.
Yeah, always laughter.
And knowing that not everything works out.
Yeah. Well, those are kind of a brief background, isn't it? And I mean, you design at BK, you practice your creativity at BK, and I guess so we both do actually, as how we operate and work and navigate from Puhen.
You inspired me. I mean, it's the way that you run it, because most of the business ideas, they're all yours. I get to be the designer that
It's awesome.
helps with some of the artifacts to bring them to life, but
Yeah.
a lot of the big vision all comes from your perspective.
Comes through dialogue, I think.
Yes.
Dialogue with you and then the team, and sometimes even kids bring some ideas, and
Yes.
we're like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
They're practicing as well.
Yeah. No, it has been a really, it is interesting. And now we have done for 13 years with BK. Like, I'm starting to look back and reflect, and really every stepping stone has been we can trace back to a creative approach to navigate and sort of course our path in the ocean.
In the
Or
blue ocean,
In the blue ocean, yeah, a business.
in the business world.
And I think that's what makes Bamukuhin a little different from, like, you can call it stationery store, but when I don't really think it's a stationery store, because I feel like it is a little bit different. you
What
know?
was your vision when you started it?
I
I mean, I know where it
Yeah.
started, which was a garage.
It was a garage, yeah. No, I think, I was working for design consultancy up in Seattle, and I was doing the trend research, and I think doing all these different research about what people were thinking and feeling and what they were wanting to have from companies that they were purchasing their goods or services from, something that came consistently was that people in
Mhm.
general were looking for connections, and a real authentic relationship. And big companies just couldn't. They're trying. I mean, I like to think they were trying, because I kept bringing up, this is what people are looking for.
Yeah.
You should try doing this, or you should try doing that. But I feel like bigger the company, the bigger the size, harder it is for them to like quickly navigate or shift their direction to be engaging their users or their consumers in such a way. And I think at some point I just said, I feel like I'm done.
I quit.
I'm done convincing or trying to convince that big ship to shift the direction. And I just thought that, I'm having the first daughter, and it was kind of time to shift my life anyways. I just going to start my own thing and live by it, live by the thing that I felt was needed in the world.
But you started this as an online business. So then how did you then turn your insight of the customers wanting to have more connection in an online business? How did you then translate that into reality? Because typically an online business is just very remote.
It was very remote, and it's true. Like, I would work in the midnight when Sachi was sleeping, or, it was just a very in-between time that I was working, and it was remote, and it's true. But I think because it was online business, but I guess because of online business, we're selling products and sharing products, the tangible connection was a few different things. One was packaging, shipping orders to a customer, even though for 6 months, maybe we only shipped like 2 or 3. Literally, we started with so small, with nothing. Every package we sent out is something special that I could create an experience around. And then all the emails, all the conversations that I would have, still to this day, I feel like that engagement on emails in the virtual world also it could be very tangible, it could be very authentic, so I feel like those were some of the few ways.
But how did you make it different? How's it different from?
Is it a quiz?
There'll be a test at the end.
I feel like I'm
just kind of curious.
I know.
I'm thinking like, yes, that's all nice, but there's something in the process that you did that's fundamentally different from all other businesses.
Well, at that time, I think it was 2010 when we started our own business. Amazon was getting more and more around. It's so interesting to remember there were days that we didn't have Amazon, but it was starting to become much more of the force around us, and just generally speaking, online e-commerce. And I noticed that a lot of the packages that company sends out was just Amazon included. It was just a box, a product, a few stuffers, and it just you get it, it is, but nothing more, nothing less, right? Like, it comes with some return label and in the product, and that your relationship is done.
Was functional.
And I think at that point, we had ongoing conversation about like, how can we do differently? How can we send it differently? And I think even from the very beginning, I was actually handwriting all the shipping label to begin with. But I think even before we sold anything, I had my wrapping station set up with my paper and a box, and just wanted to kind of wrap it as a gift. And my hope at that time, and I think that was part of a creative exercise, like, the challenge to me was not how can we make it different from other company, but it was more to me was how can I send something, a product or things that I really love, or could be travelers love. How can I send this product and share this with a person, so that the person who receives it can actually hold it longer, feel the connection longer. Like, how can I help that relationship between the artifact and the new user person that we're sharing this product, have that relationship to last longer and be more sustainable.
I have a friend of mine who receives packages from us, and he always tells me he doesn't want to open them. So he holds on to the wrapped package for as long as he can to not disturb the beauty of it all.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It is really fun.
And I think it's I mean, some people might just open it and move on, but I know that the more heart we put into each package, the more longer lasting that experience can be.
And that, I think that's actually what you were going after, which is away from function and towards an experience, right? That was sort of the perspective shift that you took on how to approach the packaging process, right?
Yeah. Looking back, what would be the strategy you think you would actually label this problem solving? I'm just curious. You can be a teacher, and just for like 1 minute, you can be a teacher.
Oh, you have to snap me out of it, otherwise I'll talk for the next 5 hours.
I know.
Well, I think there are two ways, two things that I think. One of them is looking at this, first of all, as a problem to be solved. I think that's always a challenge, I should say. Like, how do you make something special that isn't, right? How do you do something that's impossible? But then the other one is also looking at this from the receiving end, looking through different eyes, which is a perspective shift. Where you're looking at something fundamentally from not how do I do it, but how does the person receiving it, what's their experience like?
So changing the perspective.
Changing the perspective of looking through other people's eyes in that sense. But overall, looking at how to make things different, even though you didn't necessarily set out to do things different, to me, that's always pattern breaking. If you see that every single box that I receive is just a box with just tape and you just have this thing inside, there's no love in it. If you see that all the packages that arrive are like that,
and you get this.
Pattern breaking is you're looking at the opposite. You know, one thing I like about this is that the materials that you're using are still
very consistent with what you started with.
Yeah, that hasn't changed tremendously. You know, it's still, I mean, it's still a brown paper bag, if you like, a brown paper that how we ship these things. But you want to talk about
quickly about the folded.
If any of you have ever received the
origami.
Yes. What prompted this?
Yeah, that was interesting. Kind of discovery and process of its own, wasn't it? I mean, we used to just have a regular receipt for first couple of years, and I was reading a book about art of folding, Japanese art of folding, because through the book, I learned that by folding something inside, you actually fold your feelings, emotions, the intention, you know, and that there's a certain way of folding things that like really create a sacred space inside. So just reading books about it and learning, and that's my Japanese culture is my background. And I was like, I just sort of like, I wonder if I can actually do something with this, you know. And I think late night I just started playing with papers on the couch, and it was just like one of those like we know the limitation. I mean, we always print our invoice in half letter size. That's the paper.
Limitation in size.
Because that's something we can easily print. And so I cut a piece of paper in letter size paper in half, and I just literally started folding. I think I got inspired by like some of the chopstick folding techniques.
Yes.
Not the chopstick, but chopstick holder folding techniques. And I looked at it and just tried a couple different things. And I literally had a like bunch of paper in front of me on the table. And eventually I came to this pattern of folding. And then I realized if then I actually reversed the way, in the way that people would actually open when they receive it, then I can actually embed messages to be revealed along the way of folding.
And that's what you're talking about here, that there's a message in the back.
First it says we believe, and then when you unfold it, there's a little bit of message about the intention of our packages and our business. And as you continue to open, there's a little bit of information about our business, and the other one side is printed and another side is an invoice to be used.
So the back side of this would be the invoice.
Invoice to be included in an order. And it was like one of those aha moments. It was a bit of accidental process.
Well, but isn't that the creative process? I mean, is there really anything that you can 100% plan and expect it to come out?
Yeah, and I think if I set out to say I'm going to design an invoice folder that folds itself into the shape, and then be able to carry our shop cart, it would be like a little bit difficult. But I think because we started with a playful place of just like, let's
Yeah.
just see how it goes. And obviously once I get going, I cannot be stopped. I'm like, I have to get this done. So we went through a couple of design iteration of actual graphic of how it was laid out, because I was able to figure out the fold, but I think you helped me with laying out some of the graphics so it looks nice. And then we got some help from designers that were working at the time, and it has been this way for, I don't know, 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this, to me, I love this because it started with not even an idea, just a loose sort of intention.
Just
How can I fold something?
Yeah.
And I think the invoice usually is like the first thing that people toss, right?
Yeah.
It's this thing that comes with the
Take
product,
pictures and let it go.
and you let go of it. And I love that this has become something that is almost to be cherished as a process. I mean, how many people get excited about opening up an invoice? It's like almost an impossible challenge. Like, how do you make an invoice exciting? It's
that can be an assignment for your creative strategy class.
Yeah, if my students sometimes wonder where the assignments come from that I give them, and they oftentimes come through the conversation that we have, where I'm like, we talk about something at the dinner table,
project.
and then next thing you know, it becomes an assignment that the students have challenged with.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I think maybe that's the fun thing. Oftentimes, if I have a normal class, let's say, a teacher would give an assignment and they would expect a certain outcome.
Right.
And I think in creativity, sometimes there's an assignment where you have no idea what's going to come out of it. Right. Just like this.
Just like that.
And I think that's the beauty of it, that you just have to trust the process of trying things out and see what this prototype may bring.
Yeah. This has been a fun journey. Yeah, and I hope we keep getting, I hope we can continue to use this origami folder, and that's something that feels like a signature of BK.
Yeah. It's just one of the many things that makes the experience very, very special of receiving these artifacts in the way that you do.
Yeah. Should we switch a little gear?
Yeah. I'm curious to see. I mean, this is something that obviously our customers will be able to receive and participate in the experience. But I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit about how you run the business, the back end side, the things that people do not see. So, for instance, I think the biggest shock we all had was just about 3 years ago. It's crazy that it's been 3 years that we slid into the pandemic.
Right. Without knowing.
We didn't want to, kicking and screaming. We had to go in it.
Yeah.
And so, as an online business, though, a lot of people took their work at home.
Right.
They were working from home.
Yeah.
They were working online. With the retail, that doesn't really work. You can't take the retail home and fulfill from home. So I'm wondering if you want to share with us how was that moment from a creative perspective for you?
Well, first of all, I think it was one of the most challenging moments we had as a business. I mean, I think for any small businesses or even big businesses, I think it was not just for businesses, for everybody, I think it was a big shift.
It was the first time I heard the word furlough. When people were let go, but not let go, but kind of let go.
Yeah, it was a scary time, and it still is in there's some uncertainty still kind of lingers around in there, but I mean, thinking back 3 years ago, I think it was definitely it still brings me a lot of feelings when I think about it. I'm still working through that feeling, because I feel like I felt that responsibility of obviously being a mom, to the kids, but then also having to have the sustainable business that what happens, can you sustain? And then it's true that we are online business who are selling products. So even though a lot of the engagement with customers happen virtually, our physical tasks as a team, as a business, is rooted in the ground, rooted physically in person. So before pandemic, and now a little bit back more normal, that a lot of work happens in the studio with us together. Yeah. And one night, that became impossible. It was just one of those moments. Like there was a guidelines to stay at home, right? Like we weren't quite essential workers, although I would consider journals and notebooks and paper.
I think stationery is essential. Yes, I think so.
To us in our community, it's essential. But for at that moment in the world, safety of everybody was important, and that we had to kind of make sure that everybody stayed at home and didn't have to come into studio to work. So I think I went home and we had a really back and forth discussion about like, how are we going to do this? Like, what are we going to do next week? Like, how can we make sure everybody on the team can stay with us through this unknown period of time? And I mean, I could have dropped everything, but I wanted to make sure that all the team members stayed with us.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest, most important objective of that time. And I think we went back and forth. I mean, I said, okay, well, if nobody can come to the studio, I will go into the studio by myself and I will keep shipping the orders, because I think that's obviously how we can continue to support the community, but also, for us to have a business that can continue to receive the income, we needed to be able to ship the products and share the products physically. So I think I became the person that came to the studio almost every day for a few months and shipped online orders. I felt like it was very long days of shipping. But then we sort of stumbled upon an idea of, well, how can we ask the team to be active both at home with BK and virtually, but also physically.
Yeah.
And that was a creative challenge that we sort of asked ourselves. And I think luckily by the time we went into pandemic, we already started working with creating our own tapes and sticker sheets.
Yeah.
Thanks to the past experience of Emil and Ame, who already worked with them. And so we were already starting to create our own original products using tapes and sticker sheet as a sort of a tangible object.
Yeah.
And I feel like I remember just telling you, Frida, what do you think? I think we can ask everybody on the team to start designing. You be the design director, and then everybody design until we figure out what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
I think that's what I told you.
Yeah, that wasn't a question. It was just like, that's the marching order. That's the new vision that we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think that the beauty of that is that we could have never really anticipated that, but changing that vision, having that new vision for the business.
Yeah.
What if you fulfill and the fulfillment team designs?
Mm-hmm.
That was a really, really clever way of creating a vision calibration in a sense.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I always talk about with my students is that in order to stay relevant into the future, you have to evolve. Like you cannot just be doing the same thing over and over again. Right. I think that's been so true in BK, and especially at that time. I still use it as a almost like a case study in how you pivot at times of uncertainty into something new. You just try to fundamentally do things differently, and having our entire team turn into designers was magical.
Thank goodness everybody is really talented, and I mean, it's each person, each team member brings such a unique artistic sort of expression, right? Like it became such a fun, bright sort of light.
Yeah.
When we were going through that.
I think some of the tapes that are most popular are actually from Noreen, who started painting during the pandemic.
During the time, I know. I mean, I think everybody's tape resonates with different customers. I feel like I wouldn't say one does more than others, but I do like that everybody, all the tapes we've designed have a personality.
Everyone's voice is in there.
Yeah, just the way our team members are diverse and colorful and fun.
Yeah, and I think that since then, that's been the course though. So now all of a sudden, everything that we do, creatively speaking, involves almost everyone. No, it involves everyone in the studio. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone has their say and contributes to the design level. Yeah. Since then,
it's been really, really cool. And then even kids design.
Everyone.
Yeah, I think at that time we're like, well, what if we can actually have some kids artwork in the tapes, and then we got approval from kids and to use their artworks in some of the tape design, and those are, I know it brings a lot of sort of heart to people. Yeah. Smiles to people, and I feel like that has been, and I think got to the point of like designing 30 tapes so far.
Yeah, I think we're just at 30 right now.
I think when at the onset of the pandemic, we had maybe 5 tapes launched.
Yeah.
And since then, we designed 25 more tapes. And it has been. I mean, there's
through overcoming that initial hurdle, through that
Yeah.
element of difficult times,
Mhm.
trying to shift the
trying to
perspective
shift. Yeah.
really helped to bring that along.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, at least for me, like what happens is like when I feel like when I get that point of like wall in some way or
Mm.
challenges or, however you like to say it, initially it sort of like it feels really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Then and this happened multiple times actually since then, but it's like the moment I calm down, I start to see the vision.
Hmm.
Like I start to see like, what could it be? That's too
Okay.
far away.
No, I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
like, if somebody listens to that,
Yeah.
if somebody says, okay, vision calibration is
Right.
something good, changing
Right.
your perspective is good, evolving yourself or
Yeah.
your business or your brand
Right.
Or your career
Mhm.
is really beneficial. I mean, there are very few people who are successful at doing the same thing over and over again. They are there, and they're extremely successful usually in consistency.
Right.
But most of us are not like that. Most of us thrive more if we embrace change. But so if you say that you sit down and the vision just comes to you, then that seems like a magical quality in some
I know.
ways.
Okay, well, let's break it down a little bit more. What I meant to say is, I think I used to feel really overwhelmed when I encounter challenges,
Mhm.
and then that feeling of overwhelmingness basically took over for a long, long time, and then it was hard to overcome.
Yeah.
But I think experiencing the pandemic at the beginning, at least, and the needing to shift so quickly, was the objective of wanting to keep the business intact.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't just like fail.
Right.
At least I just needed to try, right? I mean, I think I had to sort of calm down, and I'm like, okay, I think I needed to think clearly,
Mm.
and I need to like sort of start widening the ideas.
Ah.
So by calming down, just like, okay, or like, I'm feeling overwhelmed, but then I'm gonna sort of acknowledge that and I put that on the side. But let's just calm down. What could it be?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's just make the bandwidth of my thinking process open up to thinking a new path.
What could be?
What could it be?
Yeah.
And I feel like that just opened up so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think it has been that way ever since. Like, and whenever something like, anything new comes up that feels challenging, I'm like, okay,
So
what could it be?
would you say that you need, if I repeat it in a way in my own words, you need that small amount of distance to not have it right in front of you, so that you can look at the broader?
I don't know. I mean, it's still right in front of me.
It doesn't go away.
It's not like something I can just run away.
Yeah.
But I do feel that kind of a distance, emotional distance from the initial I mean, they both exist, right?
Yeah.
Me that feels overwhelmed exists, but also there can be a me who can then see it from this little bit of distance and say, okay, put the mom hat on.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Oh, I like that.
Let's not be that, like, okay, I can be the kid who feels overwhelmed, but let's also put the mom hat on. And let's figure this out, and it doesn't really mean that it always works out. Like, I mean, I fail, right? Like, it's not always perfect, but I did notice the process of that is, at least for me, helpful.
Yeah. How do you embrace, or how do you work with, I think, failure in the process? Because we have
That's so interesting.
no, but we have lots of
Did you read my signature work in progress?
Yeah.
Failure is within.
It's built into it.
Yeah, I mean, I never tried to be perfect.
No, I mean, we've had plenty of ideas that didn't go anywhere.
Doesn't stop me. I
No.
guess.
Maybe that's the secret, that you
Yeah.
don't let any one thing stop you if you have multiple things going on.
Yeah. Well, I just know that I'm not perfect,
Mm.
and that's okay.
Yeah. That is very,
And
very
I also
okay.
have a really great husband who designs it, and amazing team members
Just trying to fix things in the
who's
background.
incredible. And yeah,
Thank you.
So, I mean,
Well, I enjoy very much the process of designing a lot of the ideas that you come up with,
yeah, I mean,
whether they work or not. There's
Thank-
always that.
I know.
Sure, we'll give it a
You go along
try.
the way.
We'll,
Thank you.
We'll try it out.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of the designs that we've
Yeah.
made
We
when
want.
it comes to
I know.
failure and
And success.
and process the
The
process of how to
process.
get them
Yeah, I
with
mean,
that.
yeah, we talked a little bit about packaging and how we wrap things and how the creativity has shifted that perspective. And we talked
Yeah.
a little bit about business aspect when we faced a really challenging moment. And yeah, I would love to talk about a tangible product and how sort of the creative thinking have led the course of a product that
Yeah.
we designed.
Do you want to switch to the overhead so we can share the?
Yeah, we want to talk about BK Dashboard for a little bit, which is Emil's helping us switch to the overhead for just for a moment. So the dashboard, but I'll continue to talk. So BK Dashboard is something
Start
that
with this
we. There you go. We have thought about when was.
Well, so you came up with it.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
I thought I wasn't
maybe.
100% sure about the idea. This is prototype 1 here, by the way. So this was the very first prototype that we did.
Yes, it was. It was, and I think the way it came out was obviously we love the Traveler's Notebook. For I think by the time we started offering the first round of BK Dashboard, maybe we were like 5 years into sharing Traveler's Notebook at our studio, and just really getting into the world of Traveler's Notebook. And then I think I felt like what the refills that were offered for Traveler's Notebook was really good and functional, but then there were always it's a notebook.
It's a notebook.
It's a bound notebook.
Yeah.
And being a mom and having a to-do list, and I have a messy writing, and I don't necessarily want to keep my to-do list in my refill notebook
because it's something that
it's a mess.
Yeah, it's not the pretty layout.
It's not a pretty layout, and it's just jotting down the whatever that I needed to jot down whenever that was. So I just felt like maybe it'd be so cool to have a loose leaf style layout that's just dedicated for a week or for however
1
long,
week. Yeah.
The person wants to use it. And then that person can either choose to keep it, archive it, or just toss it.
Yeah.
So in some way, kind of going opposite of what Notebook feels like, where Notebook maybe is meant to be more like kept or archived after you finish. This one is just kind of just you can toss it.
Yeah. This was prototype 1. So we had
Why were you not sure when I proposed that to you? Tell me more.
Well, if you're saying let's do a 1 sheet, 1 week piece of paper that is meant to last for a week and then be moving on into its next life, it didn't seem like something anybody would like to me.
Why?
Well, because I was so stuck in the notebook world. I was like, no, it needs to be bound. It needs to be multiple weeks. Why just 1 page? And we designed it to be a horizontal layout. And
at the time,
it features a grid layout. And we had a little quote that I'm not sure if the quote is by Bruce Lee, but it's been credited to him at some point, which says, if you love life, don't waste time, for time is what life is made up of, which was fading a little bit here. It was sort of done on purpose. And the idea being that, you want to go for productivity, which we also realized that's not really what we wanted to do with this. And after prototype 1...
Did we sell this prototype?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It's been so long.
This was in the Glassell Park studio.
I remember that.
I think we even hand-folded them.
Yeah, those are the days we would print at the local
print shop and then hand-score some of these.
They cut it for us, though, right?
Yeah, they cut it.
Oh, thank goodness.
Mostly accurate.
Yeah.
With, at the local print shop.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot of work. And then we would package it on our own.
Yes, we would.
Yeah.
And then we went to prototype 2. One of the things that we noticed, I always love this, when we try something out and it looks so good in theory, but then the reality doesn't quite turn out.
Your team member brought it up to you.
Yeah, that if you probably, I'm not sure, Eunice has good eyes. The lines were since they were digitally printed, the lines were a little bit different thicknesses. So from a distance, it actually creates a little bit of an accidental pattern, which we didn't intend to do. So we said...
But also the grid felt busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Overwhelming. Too many squares. Mm-hmm. So we went with prototype B, or 2.
Yeah.
It was dot grid.
So we printed it at the print shop.
Also still.
Yeah.
And this is where we realized that maybe we should go vertical.
Yeah, I think the part of the reason I think we ended up with vertical layout is the TN Refill has vertical notebook, but the space is pretty limiting
Very limiting.
in the way the layout is bound. And I think partially because they have to have a staple in the middle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is pretty squashed already, but it has to be even more narrow in the width of each day dedicated. And I feel like the vertical refill, people are wanting to have a little bit more space.
Yeah. However, we had, I think, a 5mm dot grid that we did here, which was
It's so wide.
it looks huge, which was a bit too big. We moved the quote here on the inside, which we also weren't 100% sure if it actually needs the quote. Less is more after all in the design process. So this was prototype 1, and it somewhat worked, somewhat failed. This one here somewhat worked, but it was still very static, right? Because it still had a large grid in there. So that's when we switched to our third version, actually, prototype 3, which was done in collaboration with Traveler's Company in Japan.
Yeah, and then this was a great opportunity to actually refine the design because this version of dashboard came after GU Notebook.
Yeah.
And GU Monthly and GU Weekly that we designed at BK and now printed collaboratively from Traveler's Company. I mean, it's such a sort of a staple in terms of like monthly and weekly layout.
Yeah.
For at least for me, and hope that a lot of people enjoy using GU. And I think this became an opportunity to incorporate the design cues from GU and turn it into a dashboard style function.
Yeah. And I think that the key thing there that you mentioned from a creative perspective was that we asked the question to some degree how to have less restriction, because a lot of these
constraints on the layout.
On the layout, because
How
a lot of
people can use
times the layout was somewhat rigid actually, because the line dictates that you ought to stay within it. So we kind of said, what if we just eliminate the lines altogether?
Yeah, so this is the front side, I think. So, and we actually ended up doing something a little bit narrower.
Smaller dot size.
Smaller dot size that's consistent with GU. And I think just overall much cleaner design layout. And yeah, we opened up quite a bit more space.
Which probably looks mostly white on the camera, I'm guessing. Design is best when it just disappears into the background. Well, I have here some that I started to fill out just to give an idea maybe how you use it. Yeah, because I use it actually very, very differently from the way it was designed. The idea was to maybe have like a to-do list, which I carry 3 with me currently.
Wow.
Dashboard. The product I didn't know I was going to love. I cannot live without it at this point.
That's how kind of everything happens.
That's everything. Yeah. So I look at.
I want to say I told you.
I use this as my home to-do list currently, and the way I do there's the master list of things that I want to capture, and then on the inside every day I move a few of the things in there. So I can day by day kind of check them off, like things that need to be done that day, that week, actually, or this month.
This looks old.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I do sometimes cut pieces off from one dashboard and glue them into the next one. Yeah, it's almost like a scrapbook.
Yeah, that's a great idea actually. Because I never get all the things done.
No, and I think that's not the point anyways. Yeah. It's just a way to hold those ideas, and some ideas can go and others can stay. Right. This is some of the things I'm doing for the studio. So it actually becomes like a small design notebook, and it gives me a chance to doodle like 2 or 3.
So you're not really using it as a weekly?
No, not at all. Okay. This one here just becomes like a really practical outside, inside, because I get to have the big ideas on the outside and then do what I love doing best, which is doodle some of those ideas. There's an idea for a little notebook I want to do, and I then ask sometimes you for help with
Japanese
some of the Japanese spelling, which is a little bit rusty, and little things that we're using for the shop. So this becomes like a design sheet, which then can translate to somewhere else. And then this is my favorite one actually at the moment. So I'm planning a trip to Iceland with you,
Yeah.
by the way. Just
Thank
you know.
you. You and me.
You included.
Okay.
And it's very overwhelming because there are a lot of things here that I don't know how to spell. I don't know where they're at. So I write down the places that I think might be interesting. And I'm starting to now transcribe them into the actual day that we're arriving and moving forward.
Oh,
So this will be
wow.
all filled with the supposed
Okay.
things that we might want to see while we're there. So it
That's
becomes
how,
like
yeah,
a
Emil used
trip
it
planner.
too in that way when they went to San Francisco. Emil and AC went to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise,
That's
but I'm
cool.
and I'm going to take this
Yeah.
this with me. I'm going to add this down space here for a map, so we know where to drive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to copy that out of the book so that this becomes like a little travel itinerary in a way to take with us.
Oh, that's exciting.
And that's how this will become, like a little travel dashboard.
Yeah.
And I think the original idea actually was that the dashboard could then live like a real dashboard, like on the outside in some ways. Right. That was sort of the original format idea for this.
That's inspiring.
Or on top of one of the notebooks if we clip it in. Right. So this could also look.
Talk about the dashboard. I think I have mine.
Did you bring yours too?
I'm not going to really go into detail of how it looks like because I don't even have it in here. Sorry.
If you want a new one, you can.
I know I can start. I must have been using it. I was going to. It's just a mess. I know. It's very like. I mean, I think it's right. It's like everything and anything with analog tools. It shows their personality so much through the way your analog layout or analog usage lend itself.
It's a process.
It is, yeah, and you're very process driven.
That's, I think, the center of my life. Yes, it's got to trust the process.
Thank you for bringing these examples. These are fun.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I didn't know I was going to love it so much, but now I can't live without it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so if you were to put that BK dashboard design in this through the sort of a lens of creativity or creative strategies that you discuss in your book, what strategy applies to the way we design
my
dashboard?
Favorite one, which is fail fast prototyping, which is you have a loose idea at best. In this case, the loose idea was a sheet that goes on top of the notebook, and you create a design and you print it, you make it, you test it, and you see what works and you see what doesn't work, and you revise it based on that. Fail fast prototyping. It's what I love doing best when one of those ideas comes from your end and you're saying, hey, what if we do fill in the blank?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. I don't think it's going to work. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Initially, you like to really fight against it all.
Yeah. Well, somebody has to keep you in check.
Yeah, right. I know. I think everybody on the team does that for me, thank goodness.
Yeah, but it's fail fast prototyping for this one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what, this book, it has like 10 different approaches. And each and every single one of those is yet just a different approach. None of these necessarily work 100% at all times. Otherwise, it would be not a strategy, but a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
But fail fast prototyping is the one that this one is made out of.
Yeah. I mean, do you find projects like this, yes, maybe fail fast prototyping is one of the driving sort of strategy or driving way that ended up reflecting on this?
Yeah.
But a combination of so many different ones, with a BK dashboard, can it, it also has an element of pattern breaking because we broke the pattern on refill notebook, and it has an element of I don't know, really hacking because I hacked your belly.
Well, I think these are definitely not singular things. I sometimes tell people that this is just vocabulary for things that we normally do anyways. That I talk to creatives. We just talked to Jennifer the other day. Yes, yeah. And she's like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about in the book because in my business I do, and she explained it to me, and so it was just giving a name to a process essentially. Right. And as with anything with creativity, it's not just one thing, it's a combination of all these.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. I mean, you have vision calibrating, which is part of what you did with your vision of changing all of us into designers for the time of the pandemic. And we do pattern breaking a lot and just looking at things from a completely, how can we do things differently? Right. How can we create an experience instead of just a transaction?
Yeah.
Right? That's pattern breaking in that sense. So it's bits and pieces of all of these.
Yeah. It makes me think should we go back to the regular camera?
Yeah.
Hold on just a second.
It makes you think that.
It makes me wonder. This is a little bit of analogous thoughts, but when we talk about feelings, like if you can name your feelings, you can be more. You can bring more awareness to what you're feeling.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's similar to also creative process. Sometimes it feels so like overwhelming a little bit because there's so many directions you can go, and there's always a chance you can make mistakes or go backward instead of forward, but I wonder when in those times you can name it, the process, then you can be aware of it and use it to move forward or backward, or at least it gets you going in some way.
I think that's a great way of looking at it, actually. I never thought of it that way. I heard from my students a lot that they now start talking with the vocabulary of the book, where they say like, "Oh, I should be doing pattern breaking in this one, or should I rather use this approach?" Which at the end of the day, really, as you said, just gives you a starting point.
It almost brings into a actionable. Yeah. Whether you move forward or backward doesn't matter, but it brings sort of momentum. From the initial momentum, from something static to something momentum.
I think the roadblock to creativity oftentimes is I don't know what to do.
Right.
I don't have any ideas. I don't know how to be different. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, this is the stepping stone. Step one, try this, see where it takes you. And then once you get going, they use the word momentum, then you start to...
You can never stop me.
I've tried.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful feeling. It's a very empowering feelings. So to wrap up our conversation, do you want to talk a little bit about what's
new,
what's ahead, what new adventure that we're embarking on?
Yes.
As one of the crazy another idea that I'm
another idea from Mark Harko, which is on the bottom of one of my lists, but it had to move to the top.
Oh,
yes. So we've been using creativity, obviously, for our business, and I teach it at Art Center College of Design. I've taught it also at business schools. I've taught it at workshops, executive education workshops, at conferences. And we always wanted to share the content with a broader audience without having to be going to a college or going to a conference or going to an executive education workshop. So we are starting to make the content available through our BK Inspiration Lab. Virtual lab.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is essentially the same content that I teach at Art Center or at the business school named INSEAD in Singapore. We've been doing this as a class. We're now taking the content itself and making it available via the BK Inspiration Lab, which I think we have already on the website.
Yes, we have a link. I think Emil's going to share the link on the chat, and it is on our website. But tell me, so these are classes that, let's just say, college students are paying a huge amount of tuition to Art Center to take as one of the classes they can sign up, right? Yeah. What's the difference between the creative strategy class you're teaching at Art Center or INSEAD, also very expensive business school, versus what we're offering as a virtual inspiration lab at BK?
Well, and if you are attending college, then I'm there in the classroom with you, and we're doing the same lecture, but then in the classroom, we actually have time to exercise it. Yeah. There's then an assignment that the students have to then wrestle with in the classroom. They have to do an assignment for next week, which we will then discuss. So that aspect is not part of this.
Right.
But what is part of it is the approach. And what I'll share in the online class is the inspiration, the case study of how I derived the method or where it actually came from. And then I'm also sharing how we're using that at BK and how we're using it as a way to develop products, as a way to run the business, but also how we use it on a day-to-day basis, just in our own lifestyle. So I have a couple of examples of those in there. And the hope is that you will be able to see, this is how they do it as a business. This is how they do it creatively to create new ideas, but also this is how they use it to run their own lives. And that's the sharing aspect in there. And I think I want to mention that the creative strategies, there are 10 in this book. The first installment that we've created is the first 3 strategies.
What are those?
They are pattern breaking,
Mhm.
which is looking at things differently, which is a lot what you do. There is vision calibration, which is the idea of evolving your vision into new realms to really try to project how you want to be different in the future, and then going in that direction. And the last one is fail fast prototyping, which is really the process of having a loose idea at best,
Right.
very, very faint one, and not trying to get towards any level of perfection, but just starting to produce,
Kind of like
testing
origami
it out,
folding invoice,
origami
yeah.
folding, the dashboard. You had the idea, like, it's never going to work, but make it anyways.
Make it anyways.
Try it out. It's like, oh, I kind of like this, but
Yeah.
this needs to change.
Mhm.
And so those three are the ones that we're going to share in what we call Creative Strategies 1. And we're right now working on 2 and 3, with the idea being that all of this will be available to those interested in expanding their own
Right.
creative mindset.
Yeah, I was hoping when we started the discussion of creating this online course, this was already well into this virtual world becoming more accessible after going through pandemic shift. And I thought, well, it'd be so cool if the contents are available, accessible, but also something people can just sit and enjoy with, like a cup of coffee or
Glass of wine.
with cheese, like having like a chat with you, like in some way,
Yeah.
it won't be dialogue, but it would be kind of like more not casual, but like feeling inclusive.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
somewhat casual in that sense, but it's
Yeah.
not like, here you have to learn this. It's more about, hey, here's how
Right.
I do it, and maybe it's helpful to you as well to take on that approach.
Yeah, I have to say that because I know you mostly worked on the contents on your own, and then I got to watch it afterwards.
Student 0.
Yeah,
Student
I was
1.
the student one of his creative strategy. I actually watched it, didn't fast forward everything. I liked, and actually I was surprised because you didn't tell me you were going to do it, but I was surprised to see so many BK examples in your as a part of the slides videos that you created. Because in the book, obviously, when you wrote the creative strategy book, BK wasn't really the way
Didn't exist
it didn't
yet.
really quite exist,
Yeah.
manifested itself. But now that it's been so many years later and reflecting back, I'm like, oh yeah, that's so true, that the thing we did does feel so much of what the strategy is about.
Well, this goes back to you saying it's like the air that we breathe. It's like we do it intuitively almost.
Yeah.
And the book was based on the professional work I did for clients.
Right.
For corporations, or even sometimes in courses that I took, where I said, hey, I want to have a different result, different experience. But yeah, we use it on a day-to-day basis. And I felt that this makes it most approachable to those that know us. When they get through BK, and they know the artifacts, they see how we operate. If you ever wonder, like, where does this all come from, I figured may as well share it.
I know it from my own perspective of how some of the examples that you mentioned in the video class, like how that happened from my perspective. But it was also really interesting to hear from your perspective and seeing it through your lens. I was like, oh, that's so interesting that you looked at this way.
Yeah.
So thank you. It's kind of like, yeah.
It's our gift to the world, is to share this content.
Yeah,
yes.
it's fun. And if people have questions about, before you do that, maybe we should go to some of the questions that might have come about. Emil's gonna bring it up for us. And if you do have questions at this time, just feel free to type in a comment, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible.
Yes. Otherwise, just email me.
There you go. Okay, how do you decide what new products to add to the BK store? Do companies contact you, or do you just come across new items in your travels? That's a good question. Thank you so much, Joe. Do you want to answer that?
So the second part of your question is the easy one. Yes, companies do contact us. And yes, we do come across things on our travels. And our team members also have very keen eyes to see the products that they enjoy mostly. And those sometimes come back into the store. And then we also have customers that say, hey, I noticed you're not carrying the so-and-so yet. Maybe you want to consider it. And we always look into that. But in terms of what products, in terms of the decision-making process, what ends up being in the store, there are two things. Sometimes we have ideas for products and we prototype them and we try them out. We make like 10 of them and we share them with the customers in store and see what the response is. That's fail fast prototyping. But as far as a general filter is concerned, we must love the products ourselves first. Like if we have a new pen and we take it home and we see that we're not actually using it, we're not going to carry it. So it has to be something that we actually love. Yeah. One of us has to love it and champion it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all of us loving it, because obviously it's right now it's 6 of us at the BK team and everybody have a different preferences about pens, notebooks, analog artifacts, but at least one or a few of us, I feel like, have to really be able to stand behind the products that we share, artifacts that we share. I also like to add, I think, yes, there's all the methods that you mentioned, like coming through the team,
process
customers. Yes, you're very process driven. If I were to put it in my words, I like to think that it's almost like a connection. Like at least for me, I look for the connection with either the artifacts or the company that we're working with.
Yeah.
And then I like to think it has to feel good.
Yeah.
For both ends of us and also the makers or person who's selling or sharing. It's encounter.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, there's one more layer to it actually, which we put on a very big creative challenge on ourselves, which is the products have to become better with age. Mm-hmm. So we try not to have any products that after a few years or so fall apart, can't be fixed, can't be altered. And so perhaps just because I have this thing here in front of me, this thing, the older it gets, the more beat up it gets, the more patina it has, the better the product becomes. And the same thing goes with any of the notebooks that we have. Through using it, through pouring your content into the pages, the products actually become better. So that's a filter that we have for everything that we sell. It has to have the potential of becoming better with age.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Do we have one more?
Yes.
He's from Vanessa. Can you speak a bit about how your analog tools fuel your creativity? I find I'm much more creative in a notebook or on paper than I'm on a screen, but would love to hear your perspective. Thank you, Vanessa. I love that question. I need a pen in my hands to be creative. I think that my biggest joy is an empty sheet of something, dashboard, a notebook, a napkin, and then a tool to doodle in it. And I find that depending on what the material is, I have different pens. I have in my pen pouch, I have like 3 or so different pens that I use. And depending on what the material is, I use one of those 3 to start creating. And I think my favorite one is currently a fountain pen and a mechanical pencil. And so the mechanical pencil is my overall most favorite one, because I can just fill pages upon pages without ever trying to necessarily needing to be right or needing to have a good idea. I can just allow the ideas to evolve as the pages continue. And so I spend very little time thinking about creativity or trying to come up with an idea. I spend the time putting any thought on paper, if that makes sort of sense. Mm-hmm. So yes, I feel I'm most creative on paper. I'm not creative at all on the screen, 0. The screen, I use computers obviously a lot, but I use it to execute the idea.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's an expensive pencil, like for finishing stuff. Yeah. But also, I think I want to point out that I'm not creative if I do research on the internet. Like if I have an idea, I don't look it up because then I'm immediately tinted by what already exists. And I think that's a big hurdle. I instead like to go outside and be inspired by something that might be in an environment, but I try to stay away from the screen at all costs in the creative process because it tints it. It makes it less original.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the same way. And I write all the stories, actually draft usually on pen and paper. Yeah. It's really hard to come up with an idea. I mean, virtually.
Yeah.
Only time I feel like something pours out of me on screen is maybe when I have something that I want to share on Instagram, and it's coming out.
Yeah.
And I'm able to like.
But you already created the image in that point.
I've already
the
have
image,
the
the work is done.
Yeah.
It's just a finishing tool.
Yeah, but then words that goes with it original.
Yeah.
So then that's really one of the few times that I feel like creative energy coming through. Sometimes my Instagram posts are really long.
Yeah.
But other more longer stories that I share, or any thoughts I have about like how to navigate businesses and stuff, I have to put it on I usually do. I'm the same way, unless I have to kind of use pen and paper. I don't know. We computer have advanced so fast, but we are not.
No, it's. If I just for a very brief second put on the teacher hat one more time, I do see my students when I give them a creative challenge. The first thing they do is they try to look it up. Like I give them a challenge that we developed over the dinner time. And the first thing they do is they try to look it up to see if they can find a solution to the problem. And then, of course, they're just using something that is already, it's not original because it's been done in some ways. So there's nothing new coming out of it. So I always love to create first on paper. Yeah. Huge advocate for that.
Yeah. You have another question?
Yvette. Hi, Yvette. You're student number 2 after Wakako.
Yes.
I attended the first creative strategy course. When will you release the second part? By the way, I must read The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. I will look that up. That sounds great. The second part, so as with anything, the first one took us a year to put together, believe it or not. The second one will probably take 2 to 3 months, and the third one probably a week. So the content is there. It's a matter of us understanding what works, what doesn't, learning software to put it all together, gathering all the images. The first course, I've had to pull out the images of you going to the flea market with Baumkuchen.
You mean like 10 years ago?
Yes, 10 years ago, to illustrate the story of how BK got started. Yeah. So those things take time, but it is basically next on my to-do list on the dashboard is to get to Creative Strategies, the second set.
Thank you so much, Yvette, for signing up. I jumped with joy when I saw your name, really, because we haven't really mentioned anywhere, and I just put it on the website just to get it going, and I saw your name. It was just so special, and I'm so glad that you got to actually go through the course. Love to hear your feedbacks, and because then we can reflect on the next one because it's still in making. So
yes.
I love that idea that every course that we create, we are better at it.
Well, it's prototype 1. It's just the first one. We try to make it get everything in there, but it's open to improvement, obviously, for the next one.
Really love to hear if anybody has a chance to take the course. Love to hear the feedback, and yes, we will definitely be working on the next one very soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
The content is there. It's a matter of putting it together.
And I'm going to check out the book too.
Yes.
The Creative Act.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. More questions? Are we good? Okay. Well, I think this is a good place to come to conclusion.
Yes.
I know. Well, thank you so much for spending a little about an hour with us, kind of talking and sharing about behind the scenes stories of BK. So we don't get to talk about this often, and I think it's
no. I think most companies try to guard it like the best kept secret in the world of how they operate. Yeah. I feel share it.
I agree with you, and I think it's. The thing is, obviously, we are the main force behind the scene, but then I guess in so many ways, everybody in the community is part of behind the scene, right? Like in so many ways, I feel that the connection with everybody who is involved.
Yeah, the community is BK. That is what makes BK BK.
So I'm grateful that we can be more transparent about things that happens and share stories because, makes it more together.
Yes, and I hope if you do have a chance, I hope you do get to enjoy the content of Creative Strategies in whatever format it is, whether it's through the book or through the course or through just chatting with me when we have the studio open here.
Yeah, if people have questions about creative strategy, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Via email.
What's the email address that you're using? Is it Frito@Baumkuchen?
Yeah, Frito@baumkuchen.net.
Okay.
And I usually get to answer any questions that you have. My mission really is to spread creativity. I think it's given us so much in terms of our lifestyle that I want everyone else to have the same tools available that we have. So it's about sharing the content.
Thank
So yes, do get in touch, please.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for being part of
And
it.
I hope you have a good rest of Sunday. And if you're local, we're open today between 12 to 5. And I'll be here the whole time, Emil too. And then you'll be in and out.
In and out.
Let's sing a song about in and out. You'll be in and out, but you'll be around.
I'll be around.
So stop by and join us. Not that you don't have to come into shop. You can just come and hang out with us, and we would love that. So thank you, and see you soon.
Bye.